Hi, this is Chandrashekhar Prabhu once again. This is continuation of a earlier post. We were discussing the issue of societies on government lands. Government, in its wisdom, decided that societies which have been on occupancy basis, which have been granted land on occupancy basis, as well as societies which have been granted land on lease basis in Mumbai, shall be converted into freehold land if the societies paid 15% of the ready reckoner land price to the government. On one hand, the Mumbai societies were to be made freehold by payment of 15% of the ready reckoner value. On the other hand, similar cooperative housing societies in Nagpur and Vidarbha, which are called Nazul lands, were sought to be converted to ownership by payment of 5% of the ready reckoner land value. The Mumbai societies felt that this was discriminatory very clearly, that one set of lands allotted to cooperative housing societies can be made into freehold by payment of 15% and 10% in Mumbai, whereas other set of similar lands within the state of Maharashtra can be made into freehold by payment of 5% or 3%. We felt that this was highly discriminatory and the government should have the same rule for all the lands, and hence the Mumbai societies applied that they should also be permitted to pay only 5% of the ready reckoner value. The matter is pending with the state government. We do not know when the state government would take a view. But we understand that the state government is extremely positive in this case, and hopefully before the corporation elections happen, the state government should be taking a view with regard to reduction of the prices to convert into freehold. May that be, and as and when that happens, it will give advantage. But as of now, if these 4,500 cooperative housing societies on collectors' land, if they want to go for redevelopment, they have to pay a certain amount of upfront money to convert their land from the present state of occupancy or lease into a freehold. Now that would require certain amount to be paid upfront. The state government and the revenue department officials with whom we have had detailed discussion are willing to give installments for payment of this amount as well, which means if they give 4 or 5 installment of payment for conversion into freehold, then the IOD can be applied for by making the first installment of the payment, which would not be a big amount, but nevertheless that would be an amount which will have to be thought about before moving ahead into redevelopment. Then we have the tenanted properties. Tenanted properties can be divided into two parts. One is the tenanted properties in the island city of Mumbai, where they are the cessed properties. There are also non-cessed properties which are tenanted in the island city of Mumbai. And then there are tenanted properties in the suburbs of Mumbai and also in the rest of the MMR region, that is Thane, Kalyan Dombivli, Vasai Virar, Mira Bhainder, Uran, Panvel, up to Alibag and so on. There also there are tenanted properties. Of course, the FSI rules change between what is in Mumbai and the others. For the tenanted properties, if the landlord and the tenants come together and arrive at certain kind of an agreement, then a small bit of token amount needs to be paid to the landlord, which is the upfront money which has to be given before the IOD is taken. Alternatively, if the landlord and tenants enter into an agreement, and under the agreement it is agreed that the plans will be submitted to the municipal corporation and IOD will be obtained, the landlord will give his no objection and this IOD will be obtained first, and then when the booking starts, the landlord's money can be paid. So if this is done, then the upfront amount for the redevelopment of tenanted property would also be very minimum. Then we come to the slums on private lands. If 70% of the slum dwellers, the eligible slum dwellers, get together and under section 13 and 14 of the Slum Act apply to the government that the land on which they are presently squatting should be acquired by government and handed over to the cooperative housing society, such properties will be acquired by government. Now the compensation to be paid to the landlord will have to be paid by the slum dwellers. That need not be an upfront payment, but there has to be a commitment or a guarantee, maybe a bank guarantee given by the cooperative housing society of the slum dweller to the government that they would pay the necessary amount. So for slum redevelopment on private lands where the lands have to be acquired by the government also, very minimum upfront amount needs to be paid. Then we come for slums on government land. Where the slums are on government land, the land automatically can be transferred to the cooperative housing society of slum dwellers, but post redevelopment, the cooperative housing society has to hand over an amount equivalent to 25% of the land price, ready reckoner land price, to the government as compensation for use of that land. So there would not be any upfront amount which will have to be paid to the government. Hence, the redevelopment of slums on government land can also be made possible. Then we come to slums on municipal land. Whatever applies to the slums on government land, the similar kind of compensation can be given to the slums on municipal land. Municipal corporation sometimes asks for space instead of asking for payment upfront, and as the slum scheme on municipal lands is completed, certain tenements have to be handed over to the municipal corporation, which if the society of slum dwellers agree to do it, then upfront amount is also not required. Then we come to society on government land which have been leased out to private landowners. Understand this situation. The government is the owner of a land. Over a period of years, the government leased out the land to someone who claims to be the landlord of the building. The landlord, whoever was the landlord who got government land on lease, built on those buildings and created tenancies. So there are tenants in the building, sometimes they are cessed, sometimes they are non-cessed, and the landlord who takes rent from these tenants himself is a tenant of the government because the land has been allotted to him by the government on lease. So there is a tricky question. If the government lease has ended, then the government extends the lease only in the name of the present leaseholder. So on one hand, There is a cooperative housing society which owns the building, where they have purchased the flats by paying the full amount, but the land on which the building stands has been leased out to the person who has sold them the flats, and the person therefore is a lessee of the government. So these are issues which need to be tackled. There is uncertainty on these issues. We have taken the matter up with the government about such properties, and will be soon finding good solutions for them. Then we come to the cluster redevelopment, where the lands are maybe on government land, maybe on private lands, maybe on municipal lands, and the entire area is taken up for redevelopment under 33(9), section 33(9) of the DC rule, and it is called cluster development, it's called an urban renewal scheme, and various owners are compensated in various fashions. If such a cluster development is taken up by the residents under the self redevelopment scheme, then there would definitely be certain amount upfront which they will have to pay, and the funding agencies will have to consider as to how this upfront amount can be paid, or whether they can be paid to the people. Some funding agency feel that they should divide the funding for self-development into two parts. One is post-IOD, post-approvals funding, which is very clear, about which they have no doubts. Second is the pre-approval funding, which they are not too sure how they are going to tackle it. We are discussing with them, but we will find a way out wherein the funds are willing, completely willing to approve funds even pre-approval. Now, how does one secure these funds and how does one manage the risk is something that we are talking. We hope to find a breakthrough in this as well, and very soon we will be able to announce that. If it comes to foreign direct investment, then the initial upfront amount also comes from foreign direct investment, and then it becomes a simpler issue. The non-cessed tenanted building in the suburbs of Mumbai. The suburbs of Mumbai also have tenanted buildings which are non-cessed, which are not cessed. And there is no clarity in the present DC rules. The present DC rule says that if these buildings are to be reconstructed, then the owner or the developer, as appointed by the owner, shall give an area, an equivalent accommodation to the existing residents. But whether the developer or the owner shall give the minimum area of 405 square feet is yet unsure. There are several developers who tell the tenants that they would give 200 square feet or 250 square feet. In one case, the developer is saying we will give you 125 square feet because you are presently consuming 125 square feet. But the government's rule is, in the new set of things, there should be no flat which should be less than 405 square feet. But for the tenanted buildings in the suburbs of Mumbai, because the law is a bit ambiguous and the DC rule does not very clearly state the facts, the tenants are being taken for a ride. We have taken it up with the government, and the funding agencies are aware of these problems, and the funding agency may put a condition that they will fund such project provided all tenants are given the minimum area of 405 square feet. Then we have tenanted on municipal properties. Now, municipal properties are of various kinds. There are buildings like the BIT chawls, the Bombay Improvement Trust chawls, which were built by the British, and over a period of years the municipal corporation came into being. First they were supposed to be barracks in which the troops lived, then the police lived, then the municipal corporation employees lived, then they were given to employees of the Bombay Port Trust, then some of them were given to the employees working in various textile mills and so on, and today they are belonging to the municipal corporation, and they can be redevelopment under DC Rule 33(7). There is another set of municipal buildings where municipal corporation has acquired the building over a period of years from private landlords by promising the tenants that we will build new buildings in place of the old buildings that are there. The municipal corporation in these specific cases have failed to provide the necessary accommodation that they had promised, and so these buildings or ground storage structure are in state of total disrepair and need to be redeveloped. They can be redeveloped under the formula that is available under 33(7). Then we have another set of tenants of municipal corporation where on its own land the municipal corporation has built buildings and allotted flats to residents who are dishoused earlier from their original houses due to the widening of the road, due to the laying of the water line, due to schools, due to colleges coming on the land on which they were living, due to garden and playground coming on the land on which they are. So if a person is living on the land which is required and acquired by municipal corporation for a public purpose, then such person is given a house on municipal land which is built by the municipal corporation. The policy of redevelopment for such buildings is yet unclear. On one hand, municipal corporation says that we will redevelop such buildings. On the other hand, the builders are approaching the tenants and saying that we will manage the municipal corporation, you give us the consent. So an ambiguity in policy making is there on such issues as well. If upfront money needs to be paid to the municipal corporation, the funding agencies may be willing. And then comes the issue of slums on central government land. Central government land has, like railways have land, like Bombay Port Trust has land, like the Defense Department of Defense has land, the Department of Ports has land, the airports own land. So central government has, the Post and Telegraph owns land. So central government has various departments which own the lands on which slums have come. The Defense Department in recent times, in a huge slum which has more than 10,000 families living on there between Khar and Santa Cruz, have taken a decision that if the slum dwellers can be accommodated by a scheme approved by the state government in 50% of that area, the remaining 50%, if they agree to give to the defense or to the central government, then the central government is willing to give 50% of the land for accommodation of the existing people. In this scheme also, there may not be any upfront money that the central government may be asking, but funding for such schemes as well was discussed with various agencies, and the whole gamut of financing of different kinds of redevelopment has been discussed. In short, the good news is that money is available. No self-redevelopment scheme shall stop for lack of money. Money will come from various sources, and all these sources have been tapped. We are speaking to them. Of course, it will take some time for fine-tuning and for their making their guidelines and making their own policies. Different banks will have their own policies. Some banks have their own venture capital funds, they have their own policy. The interest rates will have to be discussed. Some of the NBFCs want to come in debt as well as want to take equity in the project. Whether the cooperative housing society is willing to give the equity, all these issues will be discussed. But the bottom line is that you need not worry about the funding. The funding is there in abundance and will be available, and no self redevelopment scheme will stop because the funding is not there. If government helps, fine. If government doesn't help, even then the NBFCs will be there. The RBI guidelines are clear. So I have no doubt in my mind that funds will be available in abundance, and funds will be available at such interest rates that the feasibility of the self-development will not be affected adversely at all. So this is the good news. There is much more good news that I need to give you, but that we will give you in subsequent posts. With that, this is Chandrashekhar Prabhu once again bidding you au revoir. These series of 2 posts came after 7 days. Normally we have a post twice in a week. This time in 1 week we halted a bit to give you good news, and now we have 2 posts one after the other giving you good news, and we shall continue to give you good news. Lot of societies are interacting with us, asking for funding and different questions. We are open to all discussion, and we shall ensure, if we get foreign direct investment, which we are quite sure that we are going to get, then the whole game will change. That would be a biggest game changer, and self redevelopment will be more and more profitable for every member. With that, this is Chandrashekhar Prabhu once again bidding you au revoir, promising you I shall be back with more posts and more good news. Bye for now.